They glorify Cleopatra in every classroom. Her name is etched in Hollywood, her story wrapped in gold. But what if I told you she wasn't the only queen Africa ever crowned? They never teach you about Queen Amina, who rode into battle with a sword of fire, carving empires with strategy and blood. They skip Queen Nzinga, who faced European invaders with nothing but brilliance, dignity, and a throne of rebellion. They whisper about Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, when they should shout her name as the divine mother of African royalty. These were not fairy tale queens. These were warlords, diplomats, nation builders. They didn't sit pretty in palaces. They stood tall on the battlefield. So before you place Cleopatra on the highest pedestal, let me introduce you to the real African queens who shaped history and refused to be forgotten. Long before Nigeria wore its modern name, there was Zazzau, a Hausa kingdom in the northern Sahel, brimming with traders, warriors, and legends. And at the heart of this ancient land stood a woman whose name still echoes in the desert wind, Queen Amina. She wasn't born to watch from the palace. She was born to ride, into war, into history, into power. With steel in her hand and strategy in her soul, Amina became the queen who refused to be boxed in by borders. At a time when women were expected to rule from behind silk curtains, Amina saddled her horse, led 20,000 soldiers, and marched into territories most men feared to enter. Her military campaign stretched the boundaries of Zazzau, deep into what is now modern Nigeria, Niger, and beyond. Where she conquered, she built. The famous Amina walls, tall defensive barriers still standing centuries later, weren't just stone and mud. They were statements. Statements that said, "This is ours. We built this, and we will protect it." She didn't just fight with weapons. She ruled with law, intelligence, and diplomacy. She protected trade routes, welcomed merchants, and made Zazzau a powerhouse of the Hausa city-states. Now we travel south to the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba in what is today Angola. And here stood a queen who mastered the art of resistance. Queen Nzinga, diplomat, warrior, strategist, survivor. When the Portuguese came with muskets and chains, Nzinga came armed, not just with weapons, but with wit. At their first negotiation, the colonizers offered no seat. So she ordered a servant to kneel and sat on his back, her spine straight, her gaze unshaken. That moment echoed through history. Power is not given, it is taken. But Nzinga didn't just posture. She played the long game. She converted to Christianity, not out of belief, but out of strategy. She wrote letters to the Pope, made alliances with neighboring tribes, even formed military coalitions with former slaves. She outmaneuvered the Portuguese for over 40 years. When kings and generals fell, Nzinga stood. She took to the battlefield herself, clad in armor, riding beside her warriors, a queen who led from the front. She rebuilt her kingdom in exile, trained female soldiers, and created a government that was as bold as her blade. In a time when Africa was under siege, Queen Nzinga didn't just resist colonization, she redefined power on her own terms. And long after she passed, her legend remained, a woman who dared to defy empires. Now we head east, where myth and memory walk side by side, to the land of the highlands, incense, and empires. And there she rises, Makeda, the Queen of Sheba. Not just a name in holy books, but a sovereign queen whose wealth, wisdom, and influence spread across what is now Ethiopia and Yemen. She ruled over trade routes that carried gold, spices, and incense, commanding respect from both Africa and Arabia. And one day, her legend crossed deserts and kingdoms. She journeyed with a caravan of gold and questions to meet King Solomon of Israel, not to flatter him, but to match him. In the halls of Jerusalem, where kings knelt to God, Makeda held her own, not as a guest, not as a servant, but as an equal. Their meeting wasn't just a visit, it was a moment that would shape dynasties. According to Ethiopian tradition, their union birthed Menelik I, the first emperor of Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty, a bloodline that ruled for nearly 3,000 years, claiming descent from both David and Makeda. Her story became scripture. Her name became prophecy. In Ethiopia, she is more than a queen. She is the mother of kings, a symbol of divine power and royal pride. And while others debate her myth, Africa remembers her legacy. She was not just remembered, she was revered. So why do schools teach Cleopatra, but not Queen Amina? Why do movies ignore Nzinga, but glorify European queens? Because power is often erased when it looks like us. These women weren't part of fairy tales. They were leaders who challenged oppression, reshaped kingdoms, and carved their names in stone. Africa's queens didn't just wear crowns, they wielded power. If this history moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share this with the world. Because these queens deserve more than a footnote. They deserve a throne in your memory.